Tom Bower is a well-known royal biographer and commentator who is often regarded as one of the leading voices when major stories involving the royal family unfold. When the Invictus Games took place in Vancouver, he chose to attend in person rather than rely on reports, so he could judge the event with his own eyes and understand exactly what was happening behind the scenes. What he says he witnessed left him genuinely surprised. According to Bower, the spotlight no longer appeared to be on the wounded veterans the Games were originally created to celebrate and support. Instead, he believes Meghan Markle had become the main attraction throughout the event. From the attention surrounding her wardrobe to the coverage of her public appearances, Bower argues that the focus gradually shifted away from the athletes and onto Meghan herself. In his opinion, the brave men and women who were meant to be at the center of the Invictus Games were pushed into the background. While the event increasingly resembled a stage for Meghan's fashion choices rather than a celebration of the veterans, whose courage and sacrifices inspired the Games in the first place.
She would have normally been there because Invictus has always been her showcase event. Invictus was Meghan, whether it was in Vancouver or Düsseldorf or The Hague. That is where Meghan was able to star and revive her great image of the smiling Duchess. Now, I think people will say, what on earth is this woman doing here? I think the king right now, his best bet would be to distance himself completely, make it clear to Harry that the Sussexes are not welcome at all in Britain. A pretty narcissist. I think she has been remarkably successful with limited talent. I think now the real story is what I'd call the...
That is exactly why Tom Bower says he began referring to the event as the Meghan Games. In his view, the attention repeatedly drifted away from the wounded veterans and landed on Meghan Markle instead. He claims that cameras regularly cut to her, even during moments when she was simply sitting among the audience, giving her as much attention as the competition itself. According to Bower, the focus of the Invictus Games slowly changed over time, becoming less about the inspiring achievements of the competitors and more about creating publicity around Meghan. He argues that the event increasingly served as a stage where the spotlight remained fixed on her, whether it was highlighting her outfits, emphasizing what he describes as her personal fashion image, or generating attention for her lifestyle brand.
Invictus Games began with a profoundly noble mission to use sport to help recovery for wounded veterans. But lately, the math isn't mathing on their mission and the way that they run their foundation and program.
A growing scandal involving Prince Harry and his last remaining genuine charity project, the Invictus Games. But is it really a charity project at all? Is it just being used as a money-making scheme?
According to Tom Bower, nearly every time Meghan appeared at the event, it seemed to him that the moment was more about strengthening her public image than highlighting the true purpose of the Invictus Games. He argues that the wounded veterans who had traveled from countries around the world to compete and share their remarkable stories of resilience gradually found themselves pushed into the background. Bower goes even further by claiming that some participants reportedly left the Vancouver Games feeling disappointed because the attention they believed should have been focused on their inspiring journeys of recovery had instead been directed toward Meghan Markle, leaving them with the impression that their achievements were no longer the main story of the event.
Suggests that the 2025 Games in Canada were overshadowed by Meghan Markle's public appearances, referring to the event as the Meghan Games. He cites Canadian executives who allegedly felt Meghan was a distraction and that her presence was more about bling than veteran rehabilitation.
Bower argues that Prince Harry allowed this situation to develop rather than stepping in to prevent it. He claims Meghan convinced Harry that, with their Netflix partnership reportedly losing momentum and her lifestyle brand failing to deliver the success they had hoped for, becoming much more involved with the Invictus Games would help keep them in the public spotlight. In Bower's opinion, Harry accepted her reasoning with very little pushback and gradually gave her a far more prominent role within the event. He believes this transformed the Invictus Games into one of the Sussex's few remaining high-profile platforms for maintaining worldwide attention, since it had become one of the last major occasions where they could stand before an international audience. Bauer argues that Meghan took full advantage of that opportunity to increase her own visibility. According to him, this growing emphasis on the couple reportedly caused frustration behind the scenes, with many organizers becoming increasingly uncomfortable about the direction the games were taking.
Competitors that feel like Harry and Meghan suck all of the oxygen out of the room, and it's not.
As Meghan's involvement reportedly continued to expand, Tom Bauer claims that frustration within the Invictus organization also began to grow. According to him, several senior Canadian organizers became increasingly uneasy about the level of influence the Sussexes had over the event, with Meghan's role attracting particular concern. Bauer says many of them felt the spotlight was drifting further away from the wounded veterans and landing instead on Meghan, something they believed conflicted with the original mission of the Games. He goes on to claim that, as planning discussions for the 2027 Invictus Games in Birmingham have progressed, there have been reports suggesting some organizers no longer want Meghan to play such a visible part in the event. Bauer also refers to claims from an alleged insider who reportedly summed up the situation by describing Meghan as representing bling, not rehabilitation, implying that her public image no longer aligned with the values the Invictus Games were created to promote. He further speaks about what he describes as a carefully staged atmosphere surrounding the event, adding that because he attended in person, he believes his observations were based on first-hand experience rather than second-hand accounts.
This is a nightmare on wheels. Now, this is seismic. This is the biggest royal story of the year. This is an unmitigated disaster for Harry. This is a nightmare on wheels. This is catastrophic. And the reason why is because Invictus is all he's got.
Tom Bauer claims that news of Meghan's reported absence was welcomed by many people connected to the Invictus Games. According to him, some organizers, along with a number of competitors, were pleased and even relieved when they heard the reports. He argues that many felt this would finally allow the focus to return to where they believed it always belonged, on the athletes and their remarkable achievements. Bauer also claims that some participants felt they would now have the opportunity to compete, celebrate their accomplishments, and receive the recognition they had earned without worrying that the spotlight would once again shift away from them because of Meghan's presence.
He also talks about, and I know for a fact he was there, so he's experiencing these things firsthand, the staged atmosphere. At a 2025 wheelchair basketball match, Bauer claims only 43 paying spectators attended. He alleges that about 100 people were corralled around Harry and Meghan by organizers specifically for photo opportunities to create the false impression of high.
Bauer also alleges that before these reported changes, some competitors had even thought about withdrawing from the Invictus Games because they felt the event was no longer centered on the people it was created to honor. According to his account, they traveled to compete, inspire others with their stories of recovery, and represent the resilience of wounded veterans, only to feel that much of the attention had shifted elsewhere. Bauer argues that cameras often appeared to focus more on Meghan than on the powerful journeys of the competitors who had worked tirelessly to earn their place at the Games. He goes so far as to describe the event as becoming a platform that promoted Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's public image instead of keeping veterans at the heart of the spotlight. Bauer further claims that Meghan effectively turned the Invictus Games into an extension of her personal brand. He points out that the event reportedly carried a budget of around 63 million Canadian dollars and featured 543 competitors, making it a major international undertaking. Because of the scale of that investment, Bauer says more questions began to emerge about how everything was being managed. According to him, concerns about transparency reportedly grew behind the scenes, with some sponsors allegedly taking notice and quietly choosing to step away. In his opinion, those sponsors were looking for stronger accountability and publicity that remained focused on the mission of the games, leading Bauer to argue that Meghan's alleged emphasis on self-promotion may ultimately have come at a real financial cost to
The organisers
Invictus.
of the Invictus Games were thrilled, were happy when Meghan did not show up. Let me explain. Initially, the whole family was going to be at this celebration of the Games, which are taking place in Birmingham a year from now. However, at the last minute, it became clear Meghan would not be attending because of security concerns.
According to Tom Bauer's assessment, growing numbers of people eventually began placing responsibility on Meghan for the controversy surrounding the Invictus Games. He argues that if the organization wants to protect its reputation and restore public confidence, someone will ultimately have to step out of the spotlight, and in his view, Meghan could be the person expected to do so. Bauer believes her involvement attracted so much public attention and debate that the Games are still dealing with the fallout. He also points to financial figures that he says have prompted increasing concern. According to Bauer, direct grants provided to veterans organizations reportedly fell by around 63%, while overall income, financial reserves, and executive salaries all increased during the same period. He argues that this contrast has left many people asking difficult questions because, despite the organization's reported financial growth, the veterans who represent the very purpose of the Invictus Games allegedly received less support. In Bauer's opinion, these figures deserve much closer scrutiny and raise serious concerns about how resources are being allocated and what direction the organization is ultimately moving toward.
Describing them as having become a vehicle for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's personal brand, rather than focusing on...
Tom Bauer also contends that the ongoing controversy may have affected the willingness of some sponsors to remain involved with the Invictus Games. He points to Boeing's decision to end its sponsorship and suggests that the growing public debate surrounding the event could have been one of the factors behind that move. Bauer also refers to reports that government support from Australia was reduced, while acknowledging that those decisions were likely influenced by more than a single issue. Even so, he argues that many sponsors preferred to back an organization focused entirely on supporting wounded veterans rather than risk being connected to continuing public controversy. Bauer further claims that some professionals who had previously worked alongside the Invictus organization ultimately decided not to remain involved because they no longer felt confident or comfortable with the direction they believed the Games were heading.
You're dealing with taxpayer monies. People are kind of like, hey, why are we not buying prosthetics?
Right. And more importantly, you're right, are the wounded warriors getting this money that they deserve?
Bauer claims that Meghan's public image has now become closely linked to the ongoing debate surrounding the Invictus Games. Yet he says insiders believe she has no intention of quietly stepping aside. According to Bauer, maintaining a high level of public visibility is a key part of Meghan's personal brand, which is why he believes she would strongly resist reducing her involvement, even if some organizers preferred her to step back. He argues that if those responsible for the Games carefully examine how previous events unfolded, they may conclude that her increasingly prominent role became part of the wider issues the organization has been facing. Even so, Bauer maintains that Meghan is unlikely to surrender such a high-profile platform without resistance, because, in his opinion, she is not someone who willingly walks away from the spotlight.
But people are a little upset about where the money is going because right now there's been a 63% drop in actual grants to wounded warriors, despite the fact that they have more money in their bank than ever from carryover. And in Vancouver, they brought in, it was around 62 million.
Not bad.
50% of that was from the government of Canada and BC, meaning that was taxpayers.
Bauer argues that public visibility is extremely important to Meghan. And for that reason, he later concluded that giving her such a prominent role within the Invictus Games was a significant mistake. In his opinion, many of the issues being discussed today might have been prevented if stronger boundaries, clearer protocols and better safeguards had been established from the very beginning. According to Bauer, anyone familiar with Meghan's public approach would have anticipated that she would make the most of any major platform available to increase her exposure and strengthen her personal brand. He claims that whenever she is presented with a high-profile opportunity, her primary focus is often on enhancing her public image and creating benefits for her business interests. Bauer further argues that marrying Prince Harry provided her with access to worldwide recognition, and he believes she has continued to rely on both Harry and her royal connections to expand her public profile while promoting her commercial ventures. In Bauer's view, the Invictus Games eventually became another high-visibility platform that, he says, was used as an opportunity to reinforce Meghan's personal brand rather than keeping the attention centered on the veterans the event was created to honor.
The question is whether Boeing and the other corporate sponsors stay on board. My suspicion is that they will weigh it up, consider it very carefully. On the one hand, they want to rightly support wounded soldiers and servicemen and women. And on the other hand, do they want to be associated with Harry? The latter, obviously not.
The timing of all this is particularly striking because Prince Harry is reportedly facing challenges on several fronts at once. According to recent reports, he is already dealing with the financial consequences of a legal defeat that could leave him responsible for substantial legal costs. At the same time, there are claims that the Invictus Games have also come under increasing financial pressure, with reports suggesting that some sponsors have withdrawn their support. Those same reports indicate that only around £4 million has been secured so far, leaving an estimated funding gap of roughly £25 million ahead of the Birmingham 2027 Games. According to these claims, Harry has been reaching out to friends, business contacts, and other supporters in an effort to raise the remaining funds. But reports suggest that many have been reluctant to get involved because of the continuing controversy surrounding both Harry and the Invictus Games. Some observers believe this has also reflected a broader decline in Harry's public support. Bauer argues that what was expected to be a successful return, with Harry meeting potential backers and encouraging major donations, has not unfolded as planned. Instead, he claims fundraising efforts have proven far more difficult than anticipated. As for Meghan, there are also reports suggesting she has chosen to remain largely out of the public eye during this period. Some commentators believe this is a deliberate effort to protect her own image, while Harry faces mounting legal, financial, and public scrutiny. According to those reports, Meghan has kept a lower profile as Harry manages these challenges, with some observers suggesting she recognizes that appearing too closely alongside him right now could further damage public perceptions of her as well. Because of that, they believe she has become much more selective about when and where she makes public appearances. Bauer sees the situation as a remarkable example of how a couple once expected to thrive on the world stage now appears to be struggling under the weight of growing controversies and self-inflicted. Zbags. Now the conversation turns to you. Do you believe that reducing Meghan Markle's involvement with the Invictus Games would help shift the attention back to the wounded veterans the event was originally created to honor? Or do you see the situation differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this discussion, be sure to like the video, share it with others, and subscribe for more updates. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Because Meghan always has to fight for a place. She has to fight for the spotlight. She has to fight to be seen. And being seen is critical to her. She's bad because she only thinks of herself. She is only focused on self-promotion, self-aggrandizement, profits for her, doesn't care who gets damaged in the way, and has behaved disgracefully, and has never made amends. And that is a problem, and has used Harry and abused the royal family. And I think that is really where, in that whole phrase, she's brainwashed Harry, she's now going to get it back in spades.